right, guys. Yeah, so in the past 2, 3 days, I've actually been pretty sick as a dog, really. I've been coughing, blowing my nose, running to the bathroom every like 20 minutes. So, one, I apologize if I'm coughing a lot on this recording or if I'm sneezing. But in my sick solitude, I've been working really hard. I've been putting up Go videos every day, and it's been kind of working out. Since I've gotten to the Philippines, I've almost gotten 100 extra subscribers, and I've been
Oh,
trying to
good.
put out videos every single day. Um, and the good shape analysis classes, they get a lot more reviews than any of my reviews or anything. So it's kind of been working out. One of my favorite videos is Marty's Finest Hour. Marty faced the 7Q in one, and I don't know. I just thought it was a good video. But other than in my sick solitude, of course, I made this lecture that we're gonna go over today, and then I've been playing a lot on my alt account. On my original account, I kept losing a lot of games, but I wasn't playing any ranked games, and so I don't think I was taking them as serious. So I've been playing on the account that the Osaka International Go School made me make for their school. And I've been playing all rated games, all ranked games. And out of the 9 games I played in 2 days, I won 6 of them. So it felt pretty good. Um, if my throat isn't killing me by the end of the class, I
You're
could show
breaking
you a
up,
few of them.
Michael.
Is that still better or is it still breaking up?
Better at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So at the end of the class, if my throat's not killing me, then maybe we can take a look at some of the games I've been playing. Um, so let's take a look. We'll start the lecture. So this is part 3 of what I'm calling the good shape lectures, I guess. Now, of course, a lot of these examples, most of them, if not all of them, in this video particularly, are from the book itself. So if you wanted to check the book, it's called Making Good Shape by Richard Bozelich. But making it into video form has been working well for a lot of people. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback and comments and views. So I wanted to continue with this until we finish, at least going through all the shapes. I'll start with the bio, right, which is good shapes are the building blocks of your groups. Understanding and recognizing them are important to becoming a strong player. They'll help you build good intuition, while bad shapes will ruin your games. There are 2 aspects to keep in mind. One is to strive to make good shape, and the other is to spoil your opponent's shape. So let's get started. First, we're going to go over the basic shapes, which I'm sure you guys are all pretty familiar with at first, but they have some really good examples after. So the first one is obviously the extension. As we know, it's an unbreakable connection. It's very strong, but it's also very slow. These stones will live and die together once they're connected like this. The next would be the diagonal, which we're going to go much deeper in a little later. But the diagonal is a pretty strong connection, but it is not unbreakable. We're going to show a bunch of examples on how this diagonal can be broken. And, it's interesting to see. Next is the one jump. This group is definitely not connected and can be broken pretty easily when you're not on the edge of the board. When you're in the center like this, you can see that once white flops in the middle here, there's 2 cutting points. And so white's going to be able to take one very easily. And white isn't in any fear of any danger. So black is split apart. Now, on the third line, I'm sure you know that if white was to try the same thing, black would be able to defend. And the only cutting point black has can now white kill, right, if white tries to cut. And so this group is very well connected. So it's good to know when you want to use this on the side of the board and when you want to use it for jumping up on the board. We're going to look at some examples of those. But that'll be a little later. We're just going to go through all the rest of the shapes. Next is the knight's move. You can see the knight's moves can be cut in 2 places. I find that double-digit Q players and even higher level Q players don't realize that every knight's move can be cut. And so they use it for like attacking, which is the proverb, which a lot of the times you should, but a lot of people try and use it to escape. I have seen so many examples of double digit Q players trying to escape or attack with this and then get cut and killed. So let's talk about the cutting points. Obviously, there's A and B. Whenever somebody cuts you, it really depends on the ladder. So if you're planning to cut something like this, which is honestly usually one of the best moves in the game, to break up a knight's move is almost always good. But yeah, in order to cut, we need to think about this ladder. And so whatever we cut, we know black's going to try and stay connected. And then once we do cut it, now we have two weaknesses, and this is the weaker side. If the ladder works, then you can cut for white. If the ladder works for white, then you can definitely cut, and this is good for white. But when we're on the edge of the board, it's far different, because once we try the same tactic, the edge of the board helps black kill white. So there's no problem for black. Like, black is going to stay connected, is my point here. So we have to always keep in mind that the edge of the board, the third and fourth lines, are far different from the other places on the board. But in the other places of the board, this is very cuttable, whereas something like this on the side, the fourth line and the third line, it's not as cuttable. So keep that in mind. That was the same with the one jump that we looked at. Same with the two space extension. It's very cuttable. A and B is its weak points. We can see that when white plays here, white just has to pull up. White usually doesn't want to bump its head. So white pulls up, and now black has two cutting points. And we can see no matter what happens here, white's not going to have too much trouble cutting this apart and being okay. Same if black played here, it's pretty much the same thing. White makes a pinwheel shape, and then black is cut apart. Now on the edge of the board, or the third line, we use two spaces all the time, because once again, if we make this, then it's much harder for white to try and cut, right? Even if we play something like this, because white is going to die. So the edge of the board is always far different from the jumping straight up or fighting in the middle. So we have to keep that in mind. The large knight move has 4 weaknesses. It's mainly used on the third and fourth line only, compared to the other moves where you can use them in the middle. This large knight is usually used only on the third and fourth line. It combines speed and flexibility, but is not very strongly connected. There is usually a pretty big weakness here. Same with this 3-space extension, or a 3-space jump. B is the weakness here for the most part, but white can get a good cut anywhere between these. The extra large knight's move has 6 weaknesses. We see this once again all the time, mainly on the third and fourth line. And now we'll get to some examples. So what I see here is a diagonal trying to connect both to, the square stones. But this diagonal connection, as we said, is breakable. If white is thick on both sides, we can see when white pokes here in the middle, now black has 2 choices, and both of them lead to getting disconnected. And if they get disconnected, clearly they're dead. There's 2 eyes here, but they're not connected. So here's a good example of how white can break the diagonal connection. This is going to happen quite often in your games, where white might have some thickness on both sides and you're in a lot of trouble. This happens again in the next example with the one jump. So we see that there's a one jump, but white again is thick on both sides. Like if white was attacking this group and black was running away, this black group would be in trouble, because once we poke through, no matter which way black attacks or tries to connect to its group, there's 2 cutting points. And so no matter what, you can see white would be able to cut apart black here. And so this is very devastating. So here's some examples of when the diagonal and the one jump doesn't work. Next, we can take a look at when the one jump is good. So I don't want you to think the one jump is always bad. We're just showing that they can be cut apart. But in this case, excuse me, white can't really make a base. And so it's better to jump out and get a speedy exit compared to trying to bunker down. So these one jumps are really good. And black is only thick on one side, not thick on the other. So once black tries to cut here, we can use this stone as a sacrifice. If we play A, which looks like the more common move to find, if black cuts, which black can, we can now use these sacrifice stones as a manipulation against these. So we Atari black, we push forward, which hurts this stone. And if black was to play something over here, then white can descend down and kill these two stones. So black has to come back and fix. And so now white gets this nice bump here. And so almost white's groups is fully connected, just about. And black stone is neutralized. When we look at the whole board, white got a very nice thickness that's going to affect the rest of the board. And black is very small on the left side here. Well, actually, it's not very small, but white still kind of got to settle in a bad area. But this group is pretty big for black. I'm not going to say it isn't. Still, though, this is really nice for white because white was in trouble here and at the start, right? This looks like a lot of trouble. So this is a good example of how to use your one jump. The other variation is this way. We see black cuts now, and then white makes shape. This is the table shape. We talked about this in the other class. So now when black Ataris to save its stone, white can use its sacrifice to manipulate this. White can use what looks like supposedly a sacrifice, but actually gets to kill these two black stones. And at the end of it, we can judge that once again, black got a good push in the corner, but white got ultimate thickness. This thickness is extremely powerful and is going to help white for the rest of the game on the outside. So in both cases, we've kind of had to use a sacrifice, but it allows us to manipulate our opponents for us to get good shape. So that's what the one jump is used for. This is a very common shape where we have a 3-space extension, one low, one high. It's a good balance to have both low and high stones. The weakness with the extra long knight is usually here, but honestly, black could play in any one of these cases. This one is just the most easiest and common. So we'll see white now attaches on top. Black pushes to break the tiger's mouth and then comes back to threaten to cut this knight's move. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of tea. White fixes, black connects to its group, and then white doesn't sweat this stone. It doesn't worry about it. It just plays over here. So now when we look, black did undercut white. White originally had some, saying like influence or potential here, and black took it away. But white ended up getting, once again, ultimate thickness. We see how these shapes, even though they're loosely connected, they continuously give thickness if black tries to cut or invade them. And that's important to understand. Depending on how the board looks, this could be really good for white, or it could be very good for black, or it could be neutral. Like it could be good for both players. I know most players at the double-digit Q level would feel bad that they got undercut here, right? And they lost their territory because they always assume that once they make a base or something, like an outpost, that it's going to become their territory. But that's not how you have to think and go, right? Lots of things can be undercut. But if you keep connected and strong, you'll end up taking out another advantage, which is thickness. And this thickness can be used for the rest of the board. Like this would be great if white had another stone here. And it would be bad if black had like a strong position here, right? Because this thickness isn't doing much. So it all depends on the situation of the board. But understanding this connection and how it works and how you can use it to your advantage is very, very important, because I think most players would think this is bad for white, but it's actually very good, once again, depending on the board. All right. So I've seen these counter pincers a lot in double-digit Q games. It's actually very bad for black to do this, and we're going to discuss now more about the diagonal and the one jump. So it should be white's turn now, which it is. And so we're going to use the diagonal to cut connections. Understanding that the diagonal cuts your stones is very important. Now, how does this work, right? So let's see how it won't work if white jumps. So it's using a one jump instead of the diagonal. Black would be able to touch under. White tries to hane it to break this connection, but then black gets the cut. White will Atari, black Ataris, white fixes, black pushes through. White does get to cut these two stones off, but now because of this Romeo-Juliet split and this Atari, you can see that in this Atari, we can see that black got, once again, ultimate thickness, right? It got a really strong position and is pretty open for territory, and everything's fairly connected. So this is considered a very good position for black. White had to play in gote too, so black gets sente. And this all stems because white chose to use a one jump, but one jumps do not disconnect your opponent. So instead, we want to use the A, because now if we tried the same thing, white will hane, get cut, but then Atari, and we can see no matter which way black Ataris, white's going to be able to connect and kill the stone, and so these two groups both get disconnected. So in this case, because we have something to attack, this is a very good idea to use the diagonal. Now, let's look at another instance where we're giving a similar option, but instead of us attacking, now we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. We're like surrounded by two strong white groups. So instead of playing a slow move like the diagonal, white becomes very thick here, very, very thick here, and black gets bad shape. This is the iron pillar versus the diagonal. This is what we discuss a lot in our reviews. But now I get to show you why it's bad, right? And it's very simple. It's not like black's going to die here. You know, black's probably going to be able to make shape and get out. But white is becoming so thick, and black is a little flimsy, so it's going to take extra moves to fix itself. So white is becoming thick and making lots of profit, generally on both sides, while attacking black. And black is making no profit using slow moves like the diagonal. So in this case, this would be the improper time to use a diagonal. So now we're going to look at if black one jumps, right? And in this case, this is actually the much better move. Yes, white can connect again or start messing with you. But once again, we'll use our sacrifice to get a better position on the outside. So the one jump can be cut, but it is jumping out to the center much faster. And it will lead to more influential positions if white was to, let's say, try and cut through. Because in every example we've done, whenever they cut these positions, these shapes, black always can manipulate white into, taking the sacrifice and then black getting a good position. So I hope this makes sense so far, when we should use speed more than slow moves, or when we should use the diagonal, right, when we're attacking. Trying to keep our opponent split. I have a few more examples. One thing is about the diagonal. So the diagonal has 4 vital points. If white occupies one of these on each side, then black can't use the diagonal for eyes, which makes these stones very heavy. So we're going to take a look. It's very easy to find these vital points. But I think it can be hard to use them without studying them first. So let's just take a look. So we talk a lot about crosscuts in these classes. and how we shouldn't just Atari and Atari. And so let's see why. When we Atari and Atari, one, we've weakened the stone significantly, and white is very powerful. Two, when black makes this diagonal is trying to make two tiger's mouths, right? So there's two diagonals in a sense. When white plays on the vital points, you can see that black can't make eyes. And so it actually takes quite a lot of effort for these diagonals to actually make eyes. So it's important to know where the vital points are for this diagonal. Let's take another really, really good look. This reminds me of when I would play Milan. If you guys are familiar with him, he runs the MGF tournament league. And so me and him have been old school rivals, for like, I don't know, 10 years now. And I remember playing this move against him in one of the games, and he thought this was such a bad move. Now, at the time, I see this all the time in professional games and high level play, but I couldn't really put my finger on why it's so good, right? But now this lecture, reviewing the shapes in the diagonal, shows me why. So let's take a look. So just so you know, this is a very popular move. You'll actually find that I use it often in my games, where if somebody forgets to make a base or just already has a base over here, but you still want to enclose white. Let's take a look. So if white was to use the diagonal, once again, this is something I tell my students all the time, the iron pillar versus the diagonal is very strong. And now I can tell you exactly why, right? It's because black is on the vital points of the diagonal. So white can't make eyes here very comfortably, if at all. So what's going to happen is black's going to push. White pushes out, black's going to push. White doesn't want to get trapped, so pushes out. So now black has this nice thickness, and it's going to poke at the eye shapes. And then it's going to fix its own shape, right? It's going to make the table shape. So now when we look at the aftermath of all this, black has become significantly thicker on both sides, which is potentially going to be good points for black. And white looks silly, right? White has become heavy stones. Heavy stones are stones that don't have good eye potential, nor do they give off a lot of influence. And so these are like, this is kind of like the worst group you can have and go. So this move here makes the diagonal stink. That's what this move does. And so it's a very good shape to learn. And I think it's a high level one because, to be honest, I just don't think even 5 to 1 Qs can answer truly why this is good. Maybe some can. I mean, I'm not going to generalize it, but I will say that a lot of them that I experience think this is a bad move, but it's actually really great. So now we'll look at this move, which is the better move, but black can still get a good result here. This move is still worth playing, even if white knows how to deal with it. So black hits the head of 2 stones. White has to make an empty triangle to come out. And it opens up this cut. So that's why he chooses this empty triangle instead of the 1 jump. Black will poke at the eye shape, and then black will fix its shape because this is become very dangerous. And when white comes out, black pushes over, black solidifies, and white gets out. But now you see, once again, black has made a lot of thickness on this side, almost guaranteed points. And black is starting to make shape and thickness over here. It looks a little flimsier than last time, but it still looks good for me, right? And when I look at this, white's not making any points yet. White doesn't even have any eyes yet. White's out, so you're not going to kill white. But the goal always, when it comes to shape, is to put your opponent in bad shape and put you in good shape. Right now, I see an empty triangle for white, and I see a table shape for black. And so this position is very good for black and kind of poor for white. Still, this is better compared to when white used the diagonal. So that was an example. I thought that was really good. It was a very personal example to me. Finally, we're at the last part here. This one I think is easy for a lot of people, but this is a double-digit Q class, so we're going to learn some, low-level stuff. When we have this position, how should black defend its cutting point, right? We have three options. Maybe I'll ask somebody, and I know Josh is one of the newest players, and I think he's one of the newest to the game. Josh, would you be up to try and answer this question?
Sure. Yeah, let me shut my door real quick.
Okay, no problem. Gives me time to drink tea. So it's black's move. And we want to find the best defense for the cutting point at A.
I think it's probably going to be C.
Nice. Why C? You are correct. I'll just tell you off the bat you're correct. But why C over A and B?
So, C to me looks like it's forming the net, and it also, I think it sets up for a ladder, and you can guard both ways. Like if you did B, then you're only kind of. I think B would be good too, but C is better at answering those stones on the left.
Okay, yeah, let's take a look. Thanks, Josh. You did answer correct. I appreciate it. So first, if we pick A, we know A is the empty triangle. This is very poor shape. White's definitely just going to get ahead, right? So white's fine. B doesn't put pressure on white. It protects this cutting point, but what it also does is it sets up a snapback. So white gets to break. Would be the bamboo joint, right? The shape is the bamboo joint. So white gets to break the bamboo, and then black has to answer, right? Because if he doesn't, then white will kill and connect. If you don't see that, we have a snapback here. And so this would be very poor for black. So black has to once again, make an ugly empty triangle shape. And then white is now ahead. And so this is beautiful for white, and very crappy for black. And finally, just as you said, it's starting to make the net, or also the mouth shape, or also the table shape. This is the table shape. This is a great move because if white was to try and pinch through here, black now protects, and it's not an empty triangle anymore. It's a filled triangle, and this cut is protected, right? And so this shape is very strong. It's also putting severe pressure on white here. So this stone is attacking these white stones, whereas this stone wasn't, nor this one. So this is a dual purpose move, beautiful shape, and a good example of when we use the one jump instead of the diagonal, right? Or instead of a full connection. So white would push on and black moves on. And we see that the cut is still protected. And we see that black is now ahead in the race, whereas the other examples, black was not ahead whatsoever. So that is it. That is a very thorough understanding of the one jump, the diagonal, and looking at some of the other shapes. Hopefully it gives you more perspective on such things as like the large knight move, like this one. Because I do know that a lot of my students, especially in handicap games, when they have stones around, they think it's going to be their territory, but it can be ripped away. The point is that even if these can be broken up, these stones can be split, because they form a connection, we can use this connection to get something good out of it, right? So that's something that we have to learn and keep in mind. And I hope this lecture helped with that.